Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Understanding Youth Mental Health, Early Signs, Stress, Anxiety, and How to Support Your Child. I'm Dr. Jennifer Brothers with Cook County Health Office of Behavioral Health, and I will be moderating today's discussion. In honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, we wanted to create a space for honest, practical conversations to help parents and caregivers better understand early signs that their youth may be struggling, ways to support conversations at home, and when families may consider seeking additional support. Today's conversation is intended to feel supportive and actionable because we know many parents and caregivers are navigating important questions about their child's emotional well-being. I am incredibly grateful to be joined by four outstanding experts today: Dr. Yvette Adai, Dr. Naja Awadallah, Gabriela Rodriguez, and Dr. Randy Sadler. Thank you all for being here and for sharing your expertise today. To start, I would love for each of you to briefly introduce yourselves, your role, and what you love about the work that you do. Who would like to dive in first?
I think I started off earlier with an introduction, so I have no problems with it. So good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Randy Sadler. I serve as the Senior Vice President of Therapeutic and Clinical Services at UCAN Chicago. I oversee our behavioral health services for the organization, as well as our residential treatment facility and both of our therapeutic day schools, which part of what we do encompasses school-based counseling, mobile crisis response, um, and our Pathways to Success program. I've spent over 20 years working with youth, children, families, and adolescents. And so it is a tremendous honor to be able to speak today, understanding the burdens that our young people carry with them and don't often have a platform to be able to share them. And so here at UCAN, we support our youth through our continuum of services. We talk about an entry and exit point, and so hopefully they're coming in one way, but we help them and their families navigate as a pathway outward. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Sadler. Gabriela, do you want to go next?
Sure, my pleasure. Hello, everyone. I'm Gabriela Rodriguez. I'm a child and family therapist with Children's Research Triangle, and I also work as a project director here. We provide mental health services to youth and family. We specialize in complex trauma, and we provide comprehensive evaluations, therapy, and support other agencies providing consultation. And I'm excited to be here in this space full of experts and people that love to work with our youth.
Thank you. Dr. Adai?
My name is Dr. Yvette Adai. I'm a pediatric psychologist at Cook County Health in the Child and Adolescent Clinic. So, what we do here is we see kids, young adults, and parents for different types of therapy. And we also provide some services within the hospital where we'll sort of be on call. We call it consult liaison, where if families need to see us when a child is hospitalized on inpatient for a medical reason or even in a outpatient pediatric visit, we can go see them. So the goal is to make sure families can get care where they're at. So a big part of my job is also doing a lot of things with children with chronic health conditions, and then also working a lot with parents with parent management training. So I'm also really thrilled to be here with everyone. Just enjoying like working with kids and parents and helping them get through really stressful times in their life.
Thanks, Dr. Adai. And then last but not least, Dr. Awadallah.
Thank you, Dr. Brothers. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Naja Awadallah. I'm the clinical director at Arab American Family Services of their behavioral health department. We serve MENA populations we do traditional psychotherapy for individuals, families, and for groups. We also have non-clinical peer support counseling services available, and we do quite a bit of work in schools with psychoeducational programming to like raise awareness about behavioral health, particularly targeting populations of MENA backgrounds, so as to connect people with services. I've been in the mental health field for about 21 years, also working in school systems, hospital systems, community mental health centers, and have done a lot of work extensively working with populations with school refusal and anxiety. So I'm very honored to be here with this esteemed panel. So thank you.
Thank you all so very much. So before we dive into today's discussion, I want to encourage everyone joining us today to post their questions in the chat. We'll do our best to answer as many questions possible during our time together. We'll also share all resources mentioned during today's discussion in the chat as we go. And if you miss part of the conversation or you know someone who may benefit, this Facebook Live will remain available on our social media pages for future viewing and sharing. So let's dive in. Can you all share with me what are some early signs that a child or teen may be struggling emotionally or mentally that parents and caregivers sometimes miss?
I think some of those things often we see kids as being attitudinal and don't want to be bothered, and so sometimes irritability, staying in your room, can be a sign of withdrawal. Aggression can sometimes peak itself out. Paying attention to sleep changes or exhaustion. Certainly. The Dr. Awadabi just talked about school refusal. I know a big part in dealing with mobile crisis is young people just saying, I don't want to go, but not having the words to be able to verbalize what that is or why are part of the signs that parents can take a look at.
Thank you, Dr. Sadler. Anyone else want to share some of the signs that parents and caregivers might miss?
I will add to that sudden change. That is, kids don't enjoying the things that they used to enjoy, or showing themselves kind of bored, numb, or annoyed. That seems one of their favorite words now. Those elements are quite telling, or overreacting to small or daily changes, being really intense. Those are also telling reactions.
Thank you. Any others? Oh, Dr. Awadallah, you are muted.
Sorry about that. If you're to kind of like build off of maybe the trends or like clues for school refusal, if there's a lot of talk of like stomach aches, headaches, like a lot of like somatic symptoms, especially if it's patterned, especially if it's like in the evening, the day before school, like on a weekend, or if it's in the morning. A lot of times that could be anxiety. That could be, and one of the biggest issues that I've seen in parents is that they'll say they're fine, they're faking it. But when somebody has like a physiological response to distress, it's not faking. It's actually there. It's part of not only what's happening physiologically, but also like they're anticipating maybe the situation worsening as they get to school. So like a lot of complaints about maybe like stomach ache or needing to use the bathroom or headaches and things like that is pretty common with stress, with contextual stress.
Thank you.
I think just to add on to what everyone's saying, some other ones too that sometimes come up that parents might miss are sometimes some difficulties with sleep and also appetite, where you might hear your child being up later at night more often than they typically are. And you're like, oh, they're a teenager, like this is normal. But sometimes that oftentimes can also be a big sign too that something is going on. Same with appetite too. If you're seeing more of this increased pattern of lack of eating or even overeating, even past the point your child is full, those are also some things that may indicate your child's struggling.
Thank you. So, nowadays we are talking a lot more about anxiety and depression and trauma than when I was growing up. But can you all talk to me about how anxiety and trauma and depression and mental health challenges might show up differently in children and teens than adults?
One basic thing to recognize is that sometimes we struggle saying things where we're feeling is too big, and we have the language and we have the comprehension. So it's important when we notice something in our kids, instead of reacting to the behavior, asking ourselves what may be happening behind. So it's more expected for a kid to be really loud or to cry a lot, something that we see quite often, instead of the more sadness that we will expect in a grown up, is more anger, is more tantrums, is more irritability. That's usually how depression looks in later ones. In teenagers, it may look like this numbness or this avoidance to do things.
I know at UCAN, many of the youth that we support have experienced significant trauma, instability, violence, grief, or just chronic stress. And so those experiences impact emotional regulation. What that sometimes look like in terms of anxiety is just avoidance. Oftentimes we talk about the behaviors of young people oftentimes show up far before parents or caregivers recognize those signs in them. It's not until it becomes at a critical point or a crisis that folks begin to tap in. I think our other guest experts have talked about that. Is that oftentimes, we see young people, they may be faking it. They are making up excuses not to do certain things, not really diving in and just taking a pulse to ask, how are you? How was the day? Letting them know that whenever they're ready, we are present for them.
I also noticed that somebody in the chat asked, how do you know the difference between what is like typical teenage behavior versus if it's something different? So I always advise parents to like pay attention to like patterns of behavior, because by and large people are like creatures of patterns. We have same patterns of emotion, patterns of thinking and behavior. And so if there's like a reduction in what you would expect somebody to do, even if it's like, if they're a hormonal teenager, they're going through kind of like their reaction to their environment with that. There's like maybe clues like withdraw from like family engagement, something they would otherwise find pleasure in, or like maybe shifting engagement with like friends or like social circles. If there's like major disruption to like their sleep patterns, that could be something that's like kind of like the biggest clue if there's not some kind of like context to it. So I always tell parents to kind of like try to pay attention. Like, what do you like what is the clue? Because usually everybody, adults and kids and adolescents, all deal with like obstacles, but like if it's creating like obstacles that are like really pronounced, and they're like choosing not to solve or address the problem and instead withdrawing or something, then that's usually a clue that it's like worsening over time. So if it like persists for several weeks or it seems to be like intensifying, that's usually kind of like the biggest clue that I've seen.
Thank you. We mentioned stress, and I feel like stress, like our kids, or especially our high school students, are under more stress than ever before. So, and you talk about patterns, but how can parents tell the difference between typical stress, like the stress that their kids are undergoing at school, and something that may require additional support?
One key is notice how sudden this change is. Normally, all changes are going to be slowly happening. And this is something that you can notice in a little kid that stops playing with their favorite doll and have other interests. It's going to be a transition. Once you notice a sudden change that has a strong reaction, or a teen that is telling you that they're really worried about the performance, that they want it to be perfect, that they stop enjoying the activity, the sport, whatever it is, and really want everything to get perfect, that is something to pay attention. And the other aspect is to keep a look at what's happening with the friends, with the peers. Is something that the group is doing? Is this a competition and is related to an event that is coming? And they're all speaking the same language. Maybe that's something expected. But when you notice that the rest of the friends are doing their own thing and your child is really, really concerned or expressing this really rigid self concept or expecting a lot of themselves, that's something to look at. Just pay attention.
And also, to add to Gabriella's point, if it's a sudden change, or if you're not, like if you didn't pick up on how sudden the change was, if you're noticing a difference in their emotional recovery time, like how long does it take for them to get over something, or how, like, to what degree do they get over something? If they keep mentioning or drawing out reference to something that was maybe an obstacle of a problem stretched over time to the point where it's like, oh, they're really still thinking about this, a lot longer after it happened than would be expected by like what their normal personality is. That is something that's also like kind of a major clue.
Just piggybacking on what everyone indicated, certainly, we all experience stress, and teens, especially in this day in life with access to social media, they can oftentimes feel like they're always on stage, and just normal stress often is temporary, seems very manageable. They may feel overwhelmed for a bit of time, but it doesn't linger on forever. Overwhelming stress begins to interrupt patterns, as my colleagues have indicated. It changes their mood, their relationships. I think one thing that we often need to look at is the young person who's been a scholar, but then we start to see steep changes in their school performance. Looking at what their behaviors are like. It's one thing to be the mean big brother or annoying little sister for a period of time. I think that's just normal. But when things begin to be very aggy and they just can't stand each other, or, begin often slamming doors or becoming more aggressive with their parents or siblings, then out of context of what a parent would normally see. Oftentimes this persists for periods of time, and I think that's when we need to look at some type of professional help.
Yeah. So we just discussed what to look out for. So I'd love us to turn the conversation to talk about how parents and caregivers can support their children at home. So, what are some ways that parents and caregivers can create supportive, open conversations at home?
One of the biggest ways I always encourage parents I'm working with to create supportive conversations at home is by just responding to when their kids are reaching out to them or talking to them. And it doesn't mean you guys have to have a long conversation at that time, but even just like your child reaching out to you and saying like, hey, I want to show you this. And you're like, oh, this is really cool. And giving some statements back can really show and build this rapport with your child that, okay, I know that when I reach out to my parent, they're going to respond back to me. And that can also extend into bigger, more supportive conversations. The other thing too is also just making sure that you are an active listener to your kids' conversations and what they're saying. So oftentimes for parents, we really want to fix things, right? But oftentimes kids just need to be heard, and part of you listening to them and validating them and being there for them, they're able to process and work through what they need to work through.
If I could add on to that, one thing that popped in my mind was listening over lecturing. My dad will probably kill me for saying this, but he oftentimes used to call our home a democratic dictatorship. And so on Fridays, we'd all sit around the table in the evening and just talk about what the week would look like. He'd always say, I want to provide a space for you all to tell me the good or bad, even about myself. At the end of the day, of course, he's dad, so he gets to, make the final say. But it gave us an opportunity to express ourselves without feeling judged. And that, I think, building those types of connections with our young people, connection over correction, is something that we oftentimes talk about. Young people feel emotionally safe to be able to express themselves in an environment where they don't feel judged.
I was going to add to
No, please, Gabrielle, please.
I was going to add to that. I think it's a great idea to be involved as we can with our kids. I'm a huge supporter of being the host. Bring the friends here. Try to be involved with them, what they're doing, and showing what I call the three golden elements. Be a good listener. Generally show that you're interested in whatever it is that they're showing you, and be curious. Be curious about what's happening. What is the big thing? What is what everyone is talking about in the school? What is the new thing that is in fashion? And get close to your kids. If there are teenagers, ask about what's happening in school, who is dating who, what's happening. Get into that conversation so they feel open and safe coming to you. And when something happens, do your best to hold yourself and try not to judge in that moment. Support them, and then when everyone is cold, then you can talk about it. But that is given a safe haven. Know that if something is happening, especially when they start to go out on their own, that they can call you at any time and any moment and say, come pick me up. And they don't have to explain, they don't have to say. To my kids, I usually say, create a signal, a special word, a password, that when that word is used, I'm going to go pick you up and I'm going to take you out. And I can be the bad parent, that's fine. But you know that you can come to me. And that is opening the space.
I love that. Thank you. Dr. Awadala, you're going to say something?
Yeah, actually, and it bridges terrifically with what Gabriella was just talking. Actually connects it to the question that looks like that was just added to the chat of what parents should avoid. I think when children, adolescents, when they're struggling, the parents themselves are struggling because they want to be a good parent and they want to be protective and they want to quickly provide a solution. And so it's really hard to avoid at times confirmation bias. If you think the reason for the problem, you're going to be really motivated to get directly to that. I've had parents come in and they're bringing their child in. It's already a situation where it's maybe there's some reticence from the kid to be even in treatment. They're he's having a problem because of he's being picked on at school or he is being bullied at school, and they're kind of answering or naming for the child what the problem is. But the source of the way that they're behaving or what they're feeling might not, you can't know that, you can't read their mind. So with the kind of awareness that as parents we also have to redirect them if their behavior is coming out behaviorally and they're doing something dangerous or doing something wrong, we do have to redirect that behavior. And I don't want to validate them thinking that they can do this because of how they're feeling, but at the same time being able to wait and let them answer the question, let them explain where they're coming from, what lens they're looking through, because there's a lot of stuff that parents will think, well, when I was 12, but the environment is so different. There's so many other factors and variables that didn't exist when we were 12. So being able to just give them an opportunity to teach you as well as a parent is really hard for a lot of parents, but I think integral part of being able to start working towards solutions.
I love that. Oh, go ahead. Who's speaking? Did I miss? Okay. I love the feeling seen, because we as adults want to be seen, right? And I think that's a human quality regardless of what age. And that active listening and not having that confirmation bias and being curious. I want to challenge, and this is coming out as the parent as well. We've all been sitting around the dining room table where we ask our child, what's going on? We want to be those active listeners. We want to hear, we want to be engaged. We are curious. What we get from our child, I'm fine. Everything was fine. School was the same, and so what advice, I don't know if, I know from friends, I'm not the only one, but what should parents and caregivers do if you have that child who doesn't want to talk about what's going on in their lives or doesn't want to accept help or want that, that ear? What are some tips for those kids that don't want to open up so easily?
set the example.
Mm.
If taking your example, if I'm the table and I'm asking what's going on, nothing is happening, I may start sharing a little bit about my week and how is that I got this issue with a colleague because we couldn't decide where to go in this project, but we will figure it out later. And we talk, naming the emotions about my own experience and teaching them with that I may solve a big situation, breaking it into smaller pieces and without modeling how to respond.
Mm.
Maybe I wouldn't suggest discuss how worried your partner and you are about the mortgage.
Yeah.
Maybe not that, but the small things on a day-to-day basis and how is that you are navigating also frustration. How are you navigating the daily thing? That could be a powerful tool.
I
Thank
think
you.
when thinking about some of the things that everyone is saying, thinking about just how do you have these frame out these conversations when it's not it's intentional and you as the adult know, but you're creating it around structured activities. That's a little less threatening to talk when we're kind of playing games and we're just having open-ended questions as opposed to yes nos. Taking time to stay calm and be non-reactive. Um, we often, again, we as adults we want to fix everything, but sometimes folks just want to talk. And I think Gabriella just touched on it. Um, I, we've been there as adults, and we're not perfect as adults neither. Um, and letting our young people know that we have conflict. We may not always get along with our colleagues, or there are things that are imploding at work, and so letting them know I just may have big people issues, and yours are little people issues. Neither one of them is greater because your friend not talking to you in grammar school is could be the worst thing on earth, right? As opposed to my colleague not talking to me, but just listening without immediately trying to fix it and humanizing what is going on with them, just as we are as adults, I think are very helpful components of it. Letting folks know, listen here. I saw one of the questions in the chat talked about expressing how to avoid saying when a child is being expressing emotional distress. It's not about them overreacting, saying just to get over it or stop being dramatic, but really naming what it is, because we oftentimes shut down when we feel like we're being attacked or judged by what we're feeling, as opposed to being expressive, like, you know what? It's okay to cry. As a boy, oftentimes we get told, don't play with a doll, don't go in the kitchen, don't do these things. But as a young person, it's like, okay, wow, why don't you lean into what it is that what they have going on with them to show what that genuine interest is? It allows you to steer in a far better way than just shutting things down, because then they don't feel like they can come to you.
But one more thing I can add is if people are struggling with just getting like rejection from even beginning to have the conversation, like we want to investigate as parents and we want to find out like, okay, your behavior is different and I need to like figure out why. If it's a sit down at the kitchen table type setup, then it might be too like perceived too much like a spotlight or interrogation. If you do some other task at the same time, like go for a walk or like play Uno or be driving in the car, and there's some other like environment that's happening while you're doing it, and like the collecting of clues is incidental, like to like the other, that's usually like a much like smoother way to get the information. And like instead of asking closed-ended questions like how was school today, fine, giving something open-ended like talk about your day today, which like doesn't have a yes or no. I mean, they could say no, I'm not going to talk about my day, but if they reject that and say they don't want to talk about it, you can do like an emotional reflection, like, oh, you seem kind of like frustrated right now. And you wait for them to name whether or not you're correct in the emotion that you're perceiving, and then they'll maybe give you some more explanation. But like some of the most oppositional clients I've had like opened up without me even trying to get them to talk when we're playing a game, instead of just like sit down and like quickly tell me about the problem so I can start helping you. So being like patient as an adult and like, why don't we take a ride, to take a ride around the block or something that has some other task to give them like the safety to be able to bring up the topic is a good strategy.
I love the car rides. I find that I have 2 teenagers, and I find car rides are really a great way to have difficult conversations because they don't have to look me in the eye when they're sharing, and it's amazing what walls can come down on a night drive, if you will.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I have one more thing I wanted to add to that. I think we oftentimes need to also remember that sometimes a child won't open up the first time around. It's being present consistently, that when they do feel safe, that they'll come around and they'll be able to do so. That's when they eventually return and begin to let you in.
I love that. So I imagine that there's a lot of parents watching this that have felt, you mentioned not fixing things, right? I imagine that there's a lot of parents watching right now who have felt scared and frustrated or unsure of what to do when they see their child struggling. And especially when they know, like, we're not supposed to come in and fix, we're supposed to be here to support. As a parent of 2 teenagers, I know that I've felt all of those emotions. So what advice do you have for what would you want, what advice would you want those parents to have when they're feeling, in that hard space where they know something's not right? They're doing, they're kind of going through where I'm showing up, I'm being present, I can't fix this. Like, what would you want them to know when they feel like they're really struggling?
I think one of the really important things for parents to know when they're in that space is that, also being able to validate your own emotions and how scary and frightening and terrifying it is to see your child struggling and not being able to fix it. It can be really, really hard. I also often suggest parents, and I know it's really hard with like time and things, but even just doing a little bit of a thing for self-care, whether that's taking some deep breaths as you're starting to have a supportive conversation with your child again, or sometimes I'll talk to parents about coming up with a mantra or a prayer that they say to themselves. That can all really help as far as like holding and sort of making space for yourself around how difficult that can be.
Thank you.
Something that I usually say to my parents is, you're right. This is the most difficult job on earth. You're right. And it's not supposed to feel smooth all the time. Or if your child is telling you, I hate you, you're the worst mom ever, that means that something is going okay. That is expected. That is fine. If a kid never says, I hate you, then we will get worried then. But it is okay. And it's okay to be frustrated. And it's okay to sometimes say, I'm not a fan of my kid today. That's also fine. I think that just normalizing how stressful it is and understanding that not every single experience of parenting is going to be the same. You may have a different experience with your older child and this younger child is feeling totally different. That is also normal. And we didn't learn to navigate the situations that are now present. And the majority of the rules and the standards that we grew up with are not valid nowadays. They don't exist. I always say to my parents, you were told not to engage with a stranger, not to meet anyone online, not to get into the house of a stranger or the car of a stranger. That is lived today, and your kids do it all the time, and it is expected. There are new rules now. And it makes sense to find a way to navigate it. So be gentle. That would be my suggestion for every single parent. Please be gentle with yourself.
I love that. Thank you.
I think that resilience is not avoiding hardship. It's building tools and support systems that move through those hardships. It's creating protective factors for them, letting folks know. I think, as Gabriella just stated, we're not perfect. And if I can't tell you how many times I've said I hate my parents, I wish you weren't here, because they didn't let me get my way. But I think those of us, and as a young person, you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But being an adult, you're thankful for the times that they said no, the guidance that they provided, the structure when your other friends were able to go out and hang out all kinds of night and do, God knows what, that mom or dad, held the reins a little tighter on you. And I think as adults, we see the manifest of what that looks like in our own lives, how it's been able to create structure for us. And so just letting parents know, tomorrow will come. They will love you again. That I hate you isn't true. It's in that moment, but not over a lifetime. And being able to have stick to itness, and be hard with as a parent, because sometimes that I hate you has the parent lower their guard because, oh my gosh, I don't want my kid to dislike me. But kids can be manipulators too. And they know how to get into those feelings and trample all over them to make you feel a way. It's almost like playing good parent against a bad parent. But when everybody's aligned on making sure little Johnny gets to where he needs to go, good or bad, or whether he's feeling hurt or sad, it works out best for him in the end, as he gets to see navigate his way through the world.
I love that. Dr. Awadallah, did you have something you were going to say?
Oh, well, yeah, I was just going to say that, a lot of parents, and I don't want to just frame it as the population I'm working with. I currently work with a lot of immigrant and refugee populations. And so if they hear a child who is born here saying, I hate this, or you're the worst, and they're comparing their own lived experience to what they're doing, and they can't understand why they're, what do you mean you hate me? I have a roof over your heads. You have food every night. That's not what my upbringing was. And I'm giving you everything that I didn't have. But I think a lot of parents forget about that perspective. And then I always tell a parent, because I've had a lot of parents complain when their child says, I hate my life. That's a commonly expressed sentiment, and a lot of parents are offended by that. How could you hate your life? This is such a great life. Your parents love you, X, Y, and Z. And I always tell them there's an implicit today after that. It's I hate my life today, or I hate you today, that they're not articulating out loud. And it's just it resonated the most when I asked a parent, have you ever been really hungry and then not want to eat because of your situation? And you're I'm absolutely starving. And that's not the case later in the day. So if a child is trying to find a way to express their feeling overwhelmed, feeling distressed, and they don't know how to name the source of the problem or articulate the real problem, they might just use a blanket statement I hate my life. And it's hard for parents to hear that and not feel and there's nothing wrong with it either, feel offended by that. What do you mean? I'm trying my hardest here. How could you possibly hate your life? When in reality, there's I hate my life today, really brings that more boils that down to oh, this is episodic. They're struggling at this moment that they don't know what to do next. And I might not know what to tell them what to do next, but I can be consistent in trying to help them figure out how to solve the problem. And so that little invisible today after a statement like that I found has gone a long way to help parents themselves cope with the situation.
I like that comma, not today. I like that. Well, thank you all. So before we dive into our discussion about building resilience, which Dr. Sadler is always on top of things and is moving ahead, is always in my head. I want to take a moment to remind everyone watching that if you have questions, please add them in the chat. We're also going to be posting any resources that we talk about, information mentioned by our panelists in the chat throughout. And that anyone who is joining late, and gosh, what did I miss? We will have this on Facebook Live, and it'll remain available. So if you don't catch all of it right now, or you have friends or loved ones that you want to share this with, it will be on Facebook Live afterward. So come back. So as Dr. Sadler started to move into how do we build resilience? How do we build resilience? And then when do we know when to seek help? So what are we started talking about like some advice for our parents and caregivers, but what are some healthy coping skills, right? Because sometimes it's like, I hate my life today. I hate my life right now. And sometimes we're in that kind of what I call the suck. Like, you've got finals coming up. There's some drama going on with the friends group. There's some not good feelings that are going on. Like, we're not, like, this isn't this might not be a good time period. There might be sickness in the family. There may be a lot of stuff kind of going on in their lives. So what are some healthy coping skills and protective factors that families can encourage when they're in that difficult time?
If you're, we've, like, all of us have talked about this kind of like throughout the discussion so far, but trying to find out like new patterns that are helpful, and if that means like following the same order of things to wind down after a hard day of school, like between getting home from school and going to sleep, like kind of like the consistency. Also, if I always talk to people about like building kind of like supportive relationships or strong relationships, like a network of support. And that's not just like a one-way valve. If somebody was just receiving support from people around them all the time, it would have diminishing returns on how effective it is, even if it's the same quality of help all the time. But if you invest into that and you help somebody else or support somebody else, or are investing in like being there with the people who you're looking to get support from, then it feels more reciprocal, and it feels like the help that you're getting from them when you're getting it is like meaningful, and like it's really resonant. So one thing is like investing in the quality of the relationships that you already have, finding ways to like spend time with people who you already trust, could be like a really healthy, even if it's something simple, even if it's like, playing a game online against a friend, or sitting there while your grandpa fixes like changes the oil on his car, like just being present with somebody, and drawing that sort of kind of like connection through like being with them is something that can really go a long way to feel like nurtured and feel like surrounded with like options of coping.
Thank you.
Also, move your body, and teaching your kids to move, to stretch, to do activities, to also let some of that out, not as a way to repair, but as a way to just express yourself. Promote creativity, promote playing, drawing, having different escapes for that. That could be really, really useful. And as always, pay attention to what other groups of friends are doing. That is a huge, huge thing.
Absolutely. Piggybacking off them, certainly creating outlets like music or journaling, positive peer connections. One huge is having access to trusted adults or mentorships. Oftentimes as parents, we may not be the nice guy right now, but saying, go talk to your uncle, go talk to your aunt, a grandma, a grandpa, someone that you can seek out when I may not necessarily be your favorite person, right? And then just for parents, modeling healthy emotional support systems, because parents don't always have it figured out either, right? And sometimes need someone to lean on, and figuring out what managing stress in a healthy way looks like. That isn't turning to drugs or drinking, but actually being able to talk it out. Sometimes that means seeking therapy, and that's okay. As a psychologist and clinician, certainly I believe that is one of the books, right? And one thing, as I'm 47, and my dad often tells me this even now, being able to remain and create calm. He would tell me when he would get all riled up, I would be like, calm down, Daddy, calm down. And that even as we're much older now, he says even in stressful situations, he always hears in the back of his mind me saying to him, "Calm down, Daddy, calm down." Because we don't always have it. And sometimes we can go there too. So I think young people knowing that we're human helps them relax and be okay.
Yeah, I also think some other important things to add on to what wonderful suggestions everyone else has had also includes like for parents just saying to your child like sort of praising what they're doing well during these times. During times of stress, we can get really bogged down with what's not going well or other things that are going on outside. But really being able to note to your child, like, hey, I really love that you did this, or those kinds of really specific praising what they're doing really well can really help them. Not only with like noticing, like, okay, here's things that are going well during this time, but also to even just improving their own self concept and self esteem as well.
I love that. Yeah, like to celebrate the celebrations and the goodness. Um, Thank you all so very much. So, when should families, we're talking about all the kind of protective, building resilience, but when should families, and Dr. Sadler, you started talking about, therapy. It's an option. So, when should families consider seeking professional support? And what signs may indicate a child or a teen needs that additional help?
I'm a proponent of early early intervention when possible. I mean, a lot of families leave it to like it's a crisis situation they can't solve, to be like, okay, let's go speak to maybe professional. But like early intervention doesn't specifically have to be like going and setting up like regular weekly therapy appointments. It could like be small kind of introductory therapeutic context things, like speaking with a social worker at school, or something that would kind of like ease them into the opportunity to start talking about the problem. Certainly if you're seeing things like choices are becoming increasingly kind of like impulsive or dangerous or risky, like those are definite like warning signs that it's time to actually take like steps for sure. But like if you're starting to notice kind of like trends of difficulty, trends of struggling, and when kids start like failing to self-soothe, like failing to find ways to like cope with what seem to be like everyday situations, that might be like a really good sign to start some like early intervention strategies. Because a lot of us have been trained on like what is a crisis, what are warning signs of a crisis, but getting started on something before it becomes a crisis is also an awesome option. So like parents being like open to the idea of kind of like doing kind of like taking investment steps in emotional wellness is not that much different than like, hey, maybe we should start walking regularly, going to the gym, so we don't have like maybe some health complications later on in life or something. Like this is not that much different than that. So that's what I kind of always try to point to with people.
Echoing on that, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about those clear signs of crisis or imminent crisis, when a youth is saying, I don't want to do this anymore, or I want to die. But we don't need to wait until that moment. I think that every single time that I'm asking myself, is this a good time to seek? Yes. The answer is always yes. And let's reach out. And they're asking us here in the chat, how can a caregiver start looking for help if they're feeling overwhelmed? Look in the local park, activities, parent support groups. Just check it out. What is happening in the community? What is happening out there? What kind of healthy groups of peers your kid can be involved? That is always an option. And if you don't know where to, contact us. If you believe that something is happening, always know 988. That's a number that everyone should know in the moment of a crisis, of feeling overwhelmed. You don't know what to do. You can always contact hotline and receive support, and look for specific resources in your area, within your community. Reaching out to your pediatrician, your physician, and asking about what to do around anything that you can do is a good thing. Every single step forward is a step forward.
Yeah, there are resources. I think that's a great idea. Whether it's 988, NAMI Chicago, your pediatrician, your school counselor, your school principal, even reaching out to the school teacher, right? To say, like, because they might be able to connect you, but knowing that you're not alone, and that we're not meant to do this alone, right? We're as parents, it takes a village. They say it takes a village, and I'm a big believer in that. Any others before we end with our last questions. Any other suggestions about what to do, when you should consider seeking support for your child?
I think one of the biggest that the experts had mentioned is seeking out help early on. Early prevention is very key. Understanding, or when looking at a young person and their change in behaviors, is not just the change, but the intensity, how frequent it is, how long it's lasted, persistence. And I think the biggie is when it begins to start interfering with their life. Um, when they may begin in engaging in risky behaviors, things that are abnormal to what you know them to be. I think one of the questions that it talked about what happened, and I think there were great responses to what it looks like when a person, a caregiver, is feeling overwhelmed or doesn't quite know where to go. Give yourself permission that, guess what? We don't have all of the answers. Parenting does not come with a manual. There are often emotional struggles, and things can feel overwhelming just in life itself, just as well as for the young person. And so starting small, creating situations where there are absolute check-ins, not only for the young person, but having adult check-in days as well. Listening again more than lecturing, and just reaching out. I think, Jennifer, you had indicated talking to your school counselors, pediatrician, therapists, community organizations, UCAN Chicago, certainly. We have a plethora of services. Cook County Health does, and a bunch of the other experts on the call. But saying something early, I think, allows and opens up the window to be able to get the help that folks need.
I think the other thing too is just it's okay to not know and to reach out, and then we will figure it out. That's what other people are there for, like the school counselor, the school teacher, the pediatrician, like psychologist, psychiatrist. Like we can tell you, like, here's your options. There might even be things you don't even know about. Like with me, sometimes when I talk about parent management training or it's a parenting therapy that we do, oftentimes parents are like, I've never heard of this. This is so helpful. So also just reach out, talk to one of those people everyone else has mentioned, and it can start to open up a lot of options and sort of let us be part of the community for you and your child too.
Thank you. So as we wrap up today, I'm going to give you one last question. So you've had some great advice, but if you had to say 1 minute or less, what is one practical thing families could start doing this week to support their child's mental health and well-being? What would you recommend?
I would say ask yourself in front of your kids, and then ask your kids, what is something that you're proud of this week? What is something that you did that you like? Teaching early on how to model recognition and self-awareness. That's gold.
I think presence over perfection, and letting them know that simply they're not facing this alone. So whatever it is, and whenever they're ready to talk, that we're there to support them and walk alongside them.
Thank you. Who's going to go next?
I can go. I think to build off of what Gabriella and Dr. Sadler said, like modeling is really important. And so if you're going to like try to work with your kids to help them to like solve their problems, you have to be intentional about it. So if if you're going to be talking about it, like turn your phone off, like don't have your phone open. Like there has to be like demonstrated, modeled, like I'm in this moment with you, like I'm not distracted by other things, and make sure that you're like showing an effort of engagement. A lot of the things we talked about early on in the discussion had to do with like sublimation, like what you should do with distress. So it's like a healthy way to process the distress. So like I find that if you can give choices, like that's something that's really helpful. Like if somebody is acting out, finding a way to offer them choices rather than punishment right away gives them more a semblance of a control, because usually the reaction that's distress is like a perception of lack of control in something. I can't control how these kids are talking about me at school. I can't control how I feel when I'm in this situation. So if you start to introduce like opportunities for them to choose something, then they start to feel the kind of like liminal like experience of control. So like, like a really common one, I had a dad once who was really frustrated with his son's kind of like behavioral acting out, and like maybe somewhat seems to be like rough play or aggression towards his like siblings and stuff. I'm like, well, is there a way that you can channel that's acceptable? Like, what if you offered him like, hey, do you want to go bowling? You're throwing something really heavy as hard as you can at something you're trying to crash at the end of the lane, and it's a way to like move that energy, that distress into something that's acceptable. And so telling him, do you want to do something, offers him a choice of how to deal with his anger, and then offering him an option that lets him process it, rather than your option is to be quiet and to sit down, which is usually like where parents kind of like go. You want to offer them options that allow them to process the emotion. That can go really, really a long way in kind of like helping with dysregulation and helping kids to find opportunities to calm themselves.
I love that. Thank you. Dr. Adai.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me, I would say that parents can start doing is really just spending that one-on-one time with their kids just for short periods. Just when your kid reaches out to you, reach back out to them and, let them know they're going to be there and just listen. Like, it's okay to not ask questions. It's okay to just sort of be silent and just let them express whatever they need and do an activity with them.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. As we close, I hope today leaves families with one important message. Supporting youth mental health does not require perfection. Showing up, listening, creating that connection, and seeking support when needed all matter. Thank you to our fabulous partners for sharing your expertise and compassion. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. We hope this conversation leaves you feeling more informed, supported, and hopeful. As a reminder, our second Facebook Live session, Finding Mental Health Support for Youth and Families, Where to Begin and How to Find Help, will take place on Thursday, May 28th at 5 p.m. We hope you will join us for this important conversation focused on helping families better understand how to access, support, and navigate mental health resources for their loved ones. And I just want to thank our panelists again. Thank you all so very much, and I hope you have a great night.
Thank you.